Hello and welcome. We're visiting today with Dr. Stephen Langer. He wrote Solve the Riddle of Illness, and his specialty is the thyroid. Welcome, Dr. Langer.
Thank you.
There are lots of symptoms to hypothyroidism, or the thyroid being out of whack, as it were. Fatigue is one of the major symptoms, isn't it? Could you discuss that?
It is. Let me just reiterate that hypo means underactive thyroid, because a lot of people get confused with hypo. And it means underactive thyroid. And just to remind people, the thyroid hormone controls the metabolic activity of every cell in your body.
All right.
So if you have an underactive thyroid, which frequently people do undetected, and it controls your metabolism, and your metabolism is sluggish, I mean, what's the upshot of a sluggish metabolism? It's fatigue, cellular fatigue. I mean, it's fatigue on a cellular level, but it's perceived by our brains as just ongoing inability to be able to carry out the functions of normal day-to-day life. In other words, chronic fatigue. And a lot of patients that I see are misdiagnosed because the doctors don't know what's going on with chronic fatigue symptoms, chronic fatigue syndrome.
So chronic fatigue syndrome, you're saying, is a symptom of low thyroid?
No, actually, chronic fatigue syndrome, I don't want to get too complex. Chronic fatigue syndrome definitely exists.
Okay.
But it's rare. I rarely see people with chronic fatigue syndrome. Chronic fatigue syndrome does exist. What I'm saying is that anybody who is chronically tired and the doctor can't figure out what's going on very often gets the title of chronic fatigue syndrome erroneously.
Oh.
It should not be called chronic fatigue syndrome. They do have chronic fatigue. Chronic fatigue syndrome is a diagnosis where everything is excluded, including thyroid problems, and they're still tired. And to date, I mean, there's no definitive treatment for chronic fatigue syndrome. There is a definitive treatment for the chronic fatigue of low thyroid. Now, if a person comes in chronically fatigued and they need thyroid, these are the people that go to sleep tired, and they wake up tired, and they're too pooped to pop during the day. I mean, they have no stamina whatsoever. Their concentration is off. Their mental faculties are off. And frequently, as you know, these people have, obviously, if they're adults, have to go to work, and frequently they have families,
Right.
and they have kids which who they can't attend to in the way that they like to. They're ineffective at work. They're ineffective in their relationships. So what do you think happens? They become depressed.
Sure.
So because they're sick and tired of feeling sick and tired, so they go in and they tell their doctor they're tired and they're depressed. Guess what they're diagnosed with?
Antidepressants, or
they're diagnosed with chronic depression. So they're diagnosed with a psychiatric condition whereas their depression is not primary, it's secondary. I mean, if you felt worthless and tired all the time because you couldn't carry out your functions, of course you'd be depressed. Everyone would be depressed. And I'm here to tell the people who are watching this that frequently it's due to physiologic reasons. In other words, to nutrition, cellular reasons that can be addressed nutritionally, and addressed if need be by being put on a low dose of thyroid medication. Usually a combination of the two addresses the chronic fatigue problem. Within 30 to 90 days, people start getting their energy back, and their depression starts to lift. Their concentration starts to get better. They start to be able to think straight, and they become human beings again that are functional.
Well, thank you, Dr. Langer. That's very promising information.
Thank you.
We'll come back for another visit with Dr. Langer.